Okay, so we've got uh, people logging in. We are expecting close to about 35 people. We've already got about 16 people logged in. So I would like to start with some introductions. My name is Hyder. I'm the CEO at Ferrotechnics, and also we have an institute called Ferrotechnic Institute of Technology. We do a lot of cybersecurity courses or diploma in cybersecurity, as well as certification courses from IC Square, like CompTIA and ISACA, etc. I've had about 30 years experience in IT, consulting as well as education. So that's a little bit about me. I'd like to for Andrew to introduce himself. Andrew?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. My name is Andrew Amaro, and I'm the founder and CHSO. And if you don't recognize CHSO, it's because I've made up that title. It stands for Chief Holistic Security Officer. I'm hoping it sticks. Clavin Security does it preps a lot of startups for the SOC 2 audit, for the SOC 2 attestation report. So that's what we're doing. My background is a decade plus in military and CSIS, which is a Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And I come from the background of tech ops, which is where we are the ones crawling through the attics, digging tunnels, and installing all the bugs. The team is also made up from military folks, and we keep that red team perspective. And what does that mean? It means that we try to defend our clients mostly from knowing how to attack. And it's been working really well. We're also a big believer of building foundational security. So we try to make sure that you have the foundational security there so you can scale. And startups typically need that, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm proud to be here with all these great folks. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll request Dr. Valerie Lyons to introduce herself. She's joining us from Dublin. She's very well known in Europe. Not People don't know about her so much in Canada, but I hope that'll change in future. So, Dr. Valerie Lyons, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks very much for us. My name is Valerie Lyons. I'm the Chief Operations Officer in BH Consulting. We're a niche consulting firm located in Dublin, but we have a number of offices throughout the world. We don't have one in Canada, but I think a few people in Canada might know me, like yourself. But we we specialize in cybersecurity, data protection, and AI governance consulting. I'm a board director there as well, and I also lecture for Dublin City University on their master's program in privacy, ethics, and information security. My PhD is in privacy as a corporate social responsibility and the value that that brings to organizations. And I'm also author of a certainly best-selling book in Europe called The Privacy Leader Compass. Um, and my background is primarily cybersecurity. I started a long time ago in cybersecurity. In 1996, in fact, was when I did my undergrad. So I go back a bit, but the last 10 years have been in privacy. So I'm a decade just spent focusing on privacy and AI governance. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Valerie Lyons. Forgive me if I don't pronounce your last name properly. Um,
You
it's
can just call me Valerie.
okay. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'd like Nayab Sabahat to introduce herself. She's well known in the fintech space in Toronto mostly. I'd like her to introduce herself.
Thanks, Feroz. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Nayab. I have been in the security, privacy, risk management, compliance space for over 10 years now, primarily helping organizations implement and improve their security posture. Slowly transitioned into the privacy space as well, helping organization understand privacy regulations and translate them into operational practices. Recently, I have just founded this initiative for upskilling and empowering women essentially in the AI risk management space. So this is around risk management and governance of AI systems. Given this is an increasing trend in the industry in terms of adoption without the understanding necessarily, this is about having the confidence instilled in the underrepresented groups to step up and make an impact in this space. So that's where my current focus is.
So we are also very lucky to have Tabitha join us. Tabitha, I just saw Tabitha. Tabitha, she has been one of the leaders with IC Square for cybersecurity courses as well, like CSSP and CCSP, etc. And she was I think she was managing their relationships with all the different training partners. Tabitha, would you like to introduce yourself here, please?
Sure. Thank you so much. My name is Tabitha Flax, and I spent over 20 years in IT training and cyberspace, bringing training and certification through partnerships globally. Spent some time also working with academics to align with certifications and degree programs so that students from all over the world can have relevant certifications align along with the degree. So I'm very happy to be listening in on today's discussion.
Thank you, Tabitha. So I think it's time for me to start the proceedings. I'll ask a general question to our panelists, Andew, Nayab, and Valerie. So I'd like to know, your opinion about what is AI, what's the background, and how different vendors are integrating AI into their systems. Andew, would you like to start?
Sure. I was trying to see if one of the other two would take it, but I guess I'll go first.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in general, AI is definitely something that's seems quite novel. It's definitely taken. You can't go anywhere without hearing AI. Everyone's saying it. My grandma's saying it. She's like, I think I can get my slippers to do AI, and I'm like, yeah, okay, grandma. So it's definitely everywhere. It's something that every company is jumping on. Both in providing it as a capability and using it as a tool. So everyone wants to use it because it's the newest shiny thing. And it's probably just a little bit more than just marketing because it actually is quite useful, has a lot of power. My opinion, and I think most people would agree with it, is that if you use it without understanding it and understanding the risks, then there is definitely some dangers there that you're going to be introducing. But having said that, I don't think the approach of it being like the end of the world or being quite negative because it's going to do all kinds of bad things or it's going to take over the world and people are going to lose jobs. I think it's a natural progression of a new technology. It's probably at a much larger scale. It's probably going to impact a lot more. But the idea of the introduction of computers, the introduction of Excel sheets and things like that also did have an interruption in a lot of different roles in the industry. So I see it as we're going to have to adapt to that. I think there's a lot of roles that are going to be a lot more efficient, a lot more powerful by using AI as a tool. Just like using a computer, instead of having to draft blueprints, you're now doing it in CAD. Has a lot of power, so you're able to do that. But the original jobs have been now replaced with someone that runs the computer. So I think that piece for me is that I don't see it as a super bad negative thing. So I wanted to highlight that. I see it as definitely a tool that can empower a lot more people, but it comes with risks. Just like a hammer's made for nails, but it can be used as a weapon. Any new technology can be used for good, and it can be weaponized for bad. So there's always that balance. So, anyways, that's my piece there.
Ladies. Anyone?
So I could talk to the use cases that I've seen here from a European perspective. My own experience of a client using AI right now and developing AI is an indigenous company in Ireland called Origin Enterprises. And what Origin Enterprises do is they provide information to the agri industry. And you'd wonder, essentially farmers, how would they be incorporating AI into their infrastructure? And then so they have a virtual agronomist. And what an agronomist is someone who goes out and says, well, the last 4 years, the patterns of weather, the products that you've grown in this field, the best thing you can do to grow in this field to get the maximum yield is X crop. And so they now have a virtual agronomist, which is using AI, predominantly using predictive analytics. So not using like LLMs or the more modern kind of analytics. And so that would be a use case that's rather unusual. But from a cybersecurity perspective, we've seen SIEM systems, for instance, that now are using machine learning to flag abnormal login patterns. We've seen Microsoft Defender, they're using AI to block phishing attempts in real time. We're seeing user behavior analytics and automated incident response. So we're seeing a lot of cybersecurity defense systems now adopting AI, both predictive analytics and the more general models that are out there. So we're seeing both types sort of taking place. But I think what interests me are those unusual products that we're starting to see evolving, like farmers using AI. And while I think it's enormously beneficial, back to Andrew's granny, is in the
Well,
hands of
Where's the
the
key? Washroom was locked, right? Yeah.
uh sorry, I think
Sorry,
somebody
who's
Rohit
that?
is talking.
I'm
Um
sorry.
sorry.
Rohit, can you please mute yourself?
I think he has.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think in the wrong hands, we are being presented with risks that we probably hadn't anticipated before, which I know we'll talk about later.
I think I'll just add a little spin to what Valerie and Andrew mentioned. Absolutely, AI is the new and shiny thing out there, but there's also a subset of lack of adoption by businesses because it's just scary. People do not understand why is AI such a magic tool and how is it going to negatively impact me, my workforce as an organization. That adoption piece is split currently as I see it, and that is one thing that needs basic understanding of what is AI and why is it such a thing right now? Why is everyone adopting it? Why is everyone building it? And how, as an individual, is it going to impact me both positively and negatively? So going back to your question, Feroz, around what is AI, it's not magic. Having some basic understanding whether or not you're going to use it or not is super critical at this point in time for everyone. It's just learning from vast amount of data, and it's using pattern recognition, user inputs, user prompts to generate outputs for you. And that, of course, for individuals, for businesses, is driving efficiency, speed, accuracy. Those are some very prominent advantages, which is why we see such rapid adoption in the industry.
Thank you very much. So my next question, a part of that question has already been explained by Valerie, or the response has been provided by Valerie. But the question is, or the point for discussion is, how has AI already changed the cybersecurity landscape in the past few years? And I think Valerie mentioned a few points about SIEM systems and other integrations, but I would like Valerie, Nayab, or Andrew to highlight a few more use cases where
I can add a little bit to that. I think the biggest thing in cybersecurity has been a lot of the predictiveness and being able to profile a lot of the attacker groups and their ways of attack, essentially what they do in a kill chain. I think that has been something that has been able to, with all the data that we have of the past attacks, you're able to almost predict as to what they're going to do next. The other thing is, and the biggest thing is providing context to vulnerabilities that are found or alerts that are brought up. And why is context so important is because not everything that is critical on a dashboard is critical to your organization, because you might not even have that box. You might not even have that software running. So if you get like a CVE or something that pops up and is critical and tells you to go look for it, you might not have it. So having the context really helps a lot of the analysts that are trying in the SOC or trying to protect that organization. It allows them to be a lot more targeted and able to focus a lot more on the things that are important. They're also able to identify where in the kill chain their changes or patches will make the most difference. So it's not at the the very first step. If they stole credentials to get in, they're way past that. So if you're locking the door there, they're still continuing progressing within the organization. So the idea of having the context and being able to identify where in the kill chain will have the major impact, that's priceless, which means that you're going to be a step ahead or at least along the side of the attackers. So to me, that's a huge improvement. Yeah. Oh, you're muted there.
Valerie, would you have any inputs?
So, AI in cybersecurity, it's going to have its benefits, and we've gone through various different use cases, the threat detection, the prediction, all these different things that AI will provide to security. It will also provide to the threat actors. I think that that's an important piece that it presents an issue for both sides. How do we leverage these benefits in cybersecurity whilst also recognizing that our risks have increased? So we have AI-powered attacks, for instance. So we've got attackers now using AI to craft sophisticated and adaptive malware. We've deep fakes, synthetic media. We've got data poisoning attacks. We could go on and on about the new attacks that we have that we never had before, but essentially it's the sword of Damocles, isn't it really? It's dangling there, and it's offering us a banquet while it's also offering us a sword, and so I think the most important thing is to recognize that it's there. Um, for many of us, our business has been in, for instance, if I look at just automated incident response as a very basic example, we've had incident response management for years. Anyone who's been in cybersecurity has known incident response for many, many years. We know what it looks like. It's quite manual, it's quite labor intensive, and it's very, very slow as a result. Now we can automate that with AI, which is fantastic, but we still need to have some human element involved in that process. And I think what's really, really important when we talk about AI, and it's back to what Andew was saying earlier as well, and Nayab, when we talk about AI, we shouldn't see it as this all thinking, all being, all wonderful thing, that it's just programming, it's just coding on steroids. That's essentially what it is, and it can do incredible things, but it's always been able to do that. Predictive analytics have been around for more than a decade. It's not new. Um, but I think what we really need to be conscious of in this space is how does it affect us? Cybersecurity professionals, privacy professionals, how's it going to affect us? We know what it can do, but we need to think about how is it going to affect my role? How's it going to affect future roles? Is it going to be eliminated? Is it going to be expanded? Is it going to be reduced? So we need to think about those things as well when we talk about these products.
Nayab, do you have any input?
I think Valerie covered a lot of and touched upon the incident response piece too, that AI and cybersecurity is a huge strategic advantage in terms of response timelines for cyber threat mitigation. So that it absolutely is a no-brainer, and it really helps in not just response itself, but also identifying root cause analysis, telling organizations where to go fix what, because it's continually learning. So that reactive to proactive shift is a definite advantage in security.
So the couple of points from Valerie that I really liked is that her analogy that it provides us with a banquet and also provides somebody with a sword. So you're there that you see both the ends from the AI perspective. And also, another point that you made is that it's nothing new. It's the same thing as predictive analytics. And I've been seeing that, it's like business, we've been doing business analysis or business intelligence for like, I don't know how many years. I've been doing this since like 2003, 2004. So it's nearly 2 decades now, and it's just a natural progression. However, it's progressed to a point where it can become dangerous. And so while we have talked about cybersecurity landscape, we've not talked so far, or we have not touched on the governance of AI. We need to also look at the governance aspect, like even with the cybersecurity now NIST that added governance to its cybersecurity framework. And I think whoever talks about or who wants to implement AI, I think in my opinion, they should also look at the governance of AI before they even start implementing it. So my next question, I think we've already talked about it, is AI more of a threat or an opportunity for cybersecurity professionals today? Maybe just a quick feedback on that from everyone.
So I'll go on this one first. Sorry, because I just looking. I was on clicked. I wasn't muted. Um, I don't think we can say is it one or the other. I mean, clearly it's both. There's no way we can say it's one or the other. Which is going to be more dominant? Is it going to be more of a threat? Is AI going to be more of a threat to cybersecurity, or is it going to be more of a benefit? Again, I don't think I could quantify which is it going to be. But I think what I can say for certain is that anybody who's working in the areas, let's just hope that everybody who's here is only working in the good side and isn't a threat actor. But that if you're working in phishing detection or endpoint detection or endpoint protection, if you're working in incident response, anything to do with threat prediction, if you're in any of those spaces, I think you should be gearing up to really get qualified and understand AI and AI governance right now, because I think your role is not going to be replaced, but it's certainly going to have a significant uh, portion of it assigned to an AI agent of some kind. And we know that agentic AI now, it's taken off at a rate that none of us could have predicted. They thought that we would be using agentic AI in 3 or 4 years, but it looks like it's more like the end of 2025. So agentic AI is going to play a role in this space that will change how we do our roles, because now the labor intensive stuff that we did during incident response, for instance, will now go to an AI agent. And that's fantastic. But how do you work with AI agents? Do you know how you should be interacting with AI agents? These are new skills that I think we're going to have to learn.
Also, the developers who are developing these applications, especially those who are managing those development, they have to make sure that there's some sort of a human who's actually controlling that AI. It's not that, AI can just go on, learn itself and start implementing itself. So that can be a huge problem unless there's some governance around development. I see Andrew getting up to answer or to put his input over there. What do you say, Andrew?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's definitely both. I would say it's more like even like a race, right? We're always trying to beat the others, right? So from a red teamer's perspective, we think of it as being an opportunity, especially with the agentic ones, where it can identify, it can act, and decide and act. It can do, let's say, penetration testing and make it a lot quicker and find things faster. So definitely a benefit. At the same time, the bad guys can use the same thing, hence why the red teamers pretend to be the bad guys. So it's definitely a race. You have to be there faster than the previous person. So I think we I talked about foundational security, and I think it's quite important to understand that if you do have a lot of the foundational security in place already, you will be protected. There's always going to be something new that comes up, but you won't be probably the one that gets hit first, because it costs more and it takes a lot more effort to do that. In the end, all of these attackers are looking for is like the low hanging fruit. And if it's too much effort, they're going to move on. It's, back in the day, we talked about like B&Es, like break and enters. It's, if you have some sort of security, they'll move on to the next store, for example. They have cameras, they'll move on to the next thing. So we see that the attackers are looking for more numbers than having to put in a lot of effort. Now, there's also like the state sponsored that are looking for strategic leverage, and they will put in as much time as needed, right? They'll do all of the things, and they're looking for that 1% that you don't have covered. So anyways, what I wanted to say is that's definitely a race, and it's not going to change. And Valerie said the same thing, is that we're looking at whatever tools we're using to defend, they're using to attack, and we're always going to be doing this race thing. The 0-day prompt, I think I've never seen so many be advertised or put on the media since, I think it was yesterday was like, or this Tuesday was the Patch Tuesday, and Microsoft had, I don't know, 5 or 6 0 days. 0-day market used to be such a gray zone, and things weren't advertised. Now it's just coming out, and I wonder if AI has something to do with that, with the ability to try so many different iterations of an attack and be able to identify that quicker. So that might be a disadvantage, but it's also identifying a lot more of these bugs that should be fixed faster. So will Microsoft take that approach of using maybe a red teamer kind of penetration test to identify 0 days before they come out? I don't know, but it's definitely going to be an adapting on both sides. So,
yeah. Nayab, do you have any feedback on that?
A little bit on the upskilling piece and how cybersecurity professionals, are they feeling threatened about their positions? So a lot of repeating mundane tasks can easily be taken over by AI. So in this, and as Valerie mentioned, it's not a pick and choose situation here. You have to, it's inevitable. It is coming. It's already here. It's time we upskill ourselves. But looking at it from the lens of not as you're not trying to compete with AI, but you're just trying to position yourself where you can command AI. So there are always going to be elements where you can, as an example, AI is going to give you a lot of insights and analytics data. You can, as a human, define the strategy around it for your business, for your team. So those are the kind of elements that AI can just probably give you more informed decision making into. But as a professional, you can start looking into upskilling yourself from that lens, that how am I going to take control of AI in my organization, in my role, and what do I need to upskill myself to get to that position?
Yeah. For governance and proper knowledge of the AI capabilities, and we need to have boundaries. You need to know the boundaries of that application that's using AI, so that you know exactly what it is capable of and what is just a hype. Great. So I was
going to
sorry.
I was going to add just one tiny thing that I was thinking about, and Nayab would probably back me on this, is the one of the biggest, if I want to say something on the threat side, in deploying AI and using AI, is definitely like data leakage, right? People, used to worry about uploading files to certain, let's say, websites, and then disclosing certain information that was confidential for the company. Now, if you have AI, you're pretty much doing the same thing by sharing all this information. And it's definitely one of the, it's an AI gobbling monster, because that's what it wants. And so it just keeps asking you for more. And so I think the biggest threat is that we're sharing IP from organizations, we're sharing sensitive information, personal information, all of it into this one giant machine. And I think that's probably the biggest threat. But again, if done properly, it can be quite powerful. So, I don't want to be a fear monger, because that's not cool, but it's just more of, think twice before you share that piece of information. And I think that's the challenge, because in order for it to be super efficient, you need to give it all the context as possible. So it's kind of like, what do I do? So
We'll
that
talk
to me is
about we'll talk about Copilot at the end.
yeah.
I'm a bit skeptical about Copilot right now. But I have a question for Valerie. How is the European Union addressing the threats and opportunities posed by AI? You are very deeply involved with European Union and its governance of AI in European Union. How are they looking at addressing all the threats and the opportunities?
So you got to think about how the EU addresses most risks. So there in the US, it's a very self-regulatory approach to dealing with risk, and in the EU, it's become a very centralized, regulated approach. We could have an argument about which approach is better, but there's flaws on both sides of those approaches. Um, I'm not a lover of the regulated approach that EU has taken, but I think that they're sort of stuck with it and they can't really undo it now. But essentially, the main two instruments that the EU are using are the AI Act and the GDPR. The UK originally said that the GDPR was enough, and they said that they were going to regulate AI using GDPR. But then a new government came in, Labour came in, and then they changed that. And they said no, they couldn't. They were going to use the AI Act. And so I think that gives you some insight into really how much is in the AI Act. But what it does do is it does make distinctions between risks. So it has four distinct categories, and it tells you that you have to have certain things in place for different categories. And for the most AI that we're using, pretty much what that means is what's called a fundamental risk impact assessment, transparency, bias detection, these obvious things that need to be in place. I would say that bias is no different than fairness, and that fairness is a principle in GDPR. I would say that risk and a risk-based approach is also in GDPR. So the one piece of GDPR that is missing is has always been ethics. We've always known that ethics was missing from GDPR. I have a bit of a Barney about the word ethics because what one nation or approach might consider to be ethics, another nation may not. So while, say, for instance, in the US, they might consider fairness to be ethics because it's FIPS and FIPS is discretionary. In Europe, we would consider that to be compliance, and yet we bandy around the word ethics all the time. But the problem with ethics is it's not regulated. It's not a very, very strict. When ethics is violated, it gets translated into legislation. That's essentially what happens. And so we have this fundamental rights impact assessment that needs to be undertaken as part of AI Act. I think it's brilliant. That's the one piece that's come out of the EU's approach, which is the introduction of this fundamental rights impact assessment. So in data protection, we have the data protection impact assessment, very similar to the US's PIA, the privacy impact assessment, slightly different in that it's legislated for. So, but we now can add a component onto it called the FRIA. So we have a DPIA with an FRIA added onto it. If anybody's in that space and they're struggling, there is a wonderful paper by a guy called Alessandro Montilero called A Blueprint for AI. And he combines the human rights ethical impact assessment with the data protection impact assessment to form the fundamental rights impact assessment that we require in the AI Act. We also have the Digital Service Act. This is an interesting one because this is the one that incorporates content moderation. And there's obviously a discourse at the moment about content moderation, freedom of speech. Should it be allowed? Should it not be? Incitement to hatred, things like that. Europe has taken a very strict position on it. Content moderation must be allowed. Um, in the US, they want the lid taken off that so that we don't have content moderation. I think that's a dangerous direction to go in personally. Um, and so that's another piece. We also have the Digital Markets Act, which only applies to gatekeepers. So that's another piece that's actually going to help to address the monopolies and the monopolization of AI to larger tech companies. Um, and then they've established a European AI office. And so my cynicism comes in here. I'm sure that everybody has heard of all the fines that Europe has issued to the likes of TikTok and LinkedIn and WhatsApp. And we must be rolling in the money, but we're not because nobody pays. 1.5% of the Irish Data Protection Commissioner's fines, and the Irish Data Protection Commissioner are the ones who have pretty much got housed all the big tech companies. 1.5% of the fines have been paid. The rest have gone through the appeals court, which goes on for years. So that's how effective that is. And so the AI office that has been established in Europe is going to follow the same suit, and there's going to be fines after fines. But um, I don't know how that's going to go. That's pretty much a whistle-stop tour of the European approach, with a little bit of Irish cynicism added in as well.
It's an excellent analysis, just worthy of an expert like you, Valerie. Thank you very much for that insight. And actually, it's a topic of debate that we can have a couple of hours just talking about that and getting you to speak on that. Thank you very much for that feedback. So, while we're talking about ethics and all that about data and the putting a cap on the content. I don't know how much of the other side, like the hackers, believe in that, because I think they are just feeding the data like crazy. I know there's in USA, for example, lots of newspapers have sued ChatGPT because ChatGPT is just taking over all the newspapers and integrating all the information, which of course can lead to false data as well, and then false output. But that's a topic for some other day. But you've got some really valid points over there. My next question is for Andrew. Andrew, or because of his deep knowledge about the military and intelligence use. Without going into operational details, Andrew, what is your perspective on AI as both a threat and opportunity in the context of military intelligence, IT networks, and applications?
Okay, so if you promise that you're not going to share this recording, I can give you some classified stuff, okay?
Yeah.
But
Well,
only if you promise, okay?
well, we'll have to post this. Don't say anything operational, just give us some perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely so obviously you've left, but thinking back as the things that we used to do, or colleagues used to do, a lot of it was, by nature was using a lot of different languages. So, decrypting those different languages or translating and looking for patterns and looking for ways in or looking for pieces of the puzzle. So about the investigation, I mean, AI, before we called it, machine learning and all this other stuff, but it's like, it can do that a lot faster than a human can. But it can't replace the experience of the people that were doing it. The folks that I worked with were excellent. They spoke 6, 7 languages. They had national security experience. So, but the tool as AI, I can see that being definitely something that can empower them and make it faster and identify things faster. It can identify certain trends. It can maybe identify and say that, this person has changed the way that they started speaking. And so, you're looking for behavioral change and things like that. The one thing too that AI could do for, let's say, if you're trying to hide from these types of investigations, which is kind of it seems like a tradecraft on its own, is that you could use AI to essentially mask any sort of fingerprinting or a uniqueness to your writing, for example, or the way that you speak. So you can use that to mask it. So then you're not, if you're very good and diligent at doing it, you can essentially look like everybody else. And that could be pretty hard for the investigators to be like, oh, this is the person we're looking for. So I can see it again, the bad side using it to in their favor. The military, for example, can be looking at, you know, the predictiveness of things and looking for potential movements of their opponents, and looking and calculating based on what assets they have deployed in certain regions. They can now throw in weather, they can throw in all kinds of data to it and come out with a plan that in the past would be quite impossible to do in the amount of time that we make it useful, you know. So definitely, definitely something that can help. The other challenges that it's going to be is that these models that are going to be used won't be models that are, you know, the commodity type where, you know, they just buy an account. So they're going to have to bring it in-house. They're going to have to maintain that model in-house. They're going to have to put in the ethics, all the regulations and laws and things that we have for the processes that we do within the intelligence agency and in the military will have to be embedded and trained in the models. And then those models will have to become accountable. There has to be a way to present the model's decisions at court and make sure that all of those match. So when you go for warrants, you're going to be able to, you have to prove that the decision was made in the proper fashion. So I think it can definitely help, but it's showing that it's done the right thing and proving that is going to be the biggest challenge, especially mostly on the intel side here in Canada. So, because there's a lot of work and things that you have to do before you can even go after a target and start investigating them. And where does that data all sit? How is it protected and so on? How are you going to feed that model and take care of it? So a lot of opportunity, but I feel like it's going to be a challenge. It's not going to be an easy thing to do properly. So,
you know what really frightens me, Andrew? There was that incident in Florida a few years ago where the water filter plant was taken over by some hackers, and they had the opportunity to open up all the gates and dump the chemicals. And what really frightens me, if there was no human behind that and there was an AI bot doing all that, they would have not waited a second before dumping all those chemicals in the water and killing off hundreds of thousands of people. And that's where I'm really, you know, thinking about what if a rogue nation has got all these applications or these capabilities where they can use AI against their opponents. So that's you know, that's one of the capabilities that we need to counter somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of the nation states that are looking for leverage and trying to interrupt or find presence in a lot of these critical infrastructures and just, you know, stay dormant until the time comes to do that. Yeah, they could use AI, but to be honest, they have a lot of humans, period. So they have teams that are doing this all the time. So the threat is already there. So it comes down to the ethics of each individual human. With the AI, maybe it becomes more standardized. I don't know. But they'll train the AI to be a replica of either themselves or what the group's, you know, methodologies are and beliefs, I think. Yeah, so I think the threat is definitely already there.
Quick question for Nayab. How do you see AI transforming the cybersecurity landscape for fintech and SaaS organizations globally?
Yeah, AI is already here. It's already being adopted. I think at this point in time, specific use cases, especially in fintech, like lending or fraud risk management or transaction monitoring, KYC checks, anti-money laundering compliance, these are being automated. These workflows are being integrated with AI systems already. Why? Definitely because of a speed, accuracy, those kind of things. But then again, debatable. Adoption is increasing without proper governance. And that is the biggest problem, especially in regulated spaces like fintech. You are making decisions using AI that can actually impact real humans without having proper governance over it, oversight on your use and deployment of AI systems. And it's not just about in-house development, it's also about integrating third parties, and that opens up a huge can of worms on its own without understanding the third-party AI system providers' practices around how they are developing their AI, how are they training their models, what data are they using. Even for publicly available information, it's debatable whether or not you're allowed to go scrape it and use it for training your model data, because you need to still go and review the terms of that asset that you are reviewing for scraping. So there's a lot that goes into all the way from using or developing your own AI system. How are you training your model data? Do the developers, Feroz, as you mentioned, do they understand that what do they need to embed into these systems to ensure that there is accountability, there is transparency that you can give to the consumer, that this is how our AI is going to use your data, this is how you're going to process it, tying it back to privacy, that here are your rights. If you wanted to delete your data, it goes into AI, it's almost lost. How are you going to retain that traceability in your AI system? Those are the things that developers, it's not that they don't want to do it, they just don't know better. So it's on an organization that it's cool to adopt and, drive efficiency and, more economic benefits for any organization that is adopting AI, but it's also their accountability and moral responsibility to ensure that there is a governance structure, to ensure that everyone involved is upskilled, they are informed, you have the right skills, there you have the right guidelines in your company to ensure that whatever practices you are employing using AI within your organization are being informed. Everyone understands the risks associated with it, and you're building mitigating measures into those. So looking, AI governance is such a need right now, but unfortunately, organizations just look at it as a regulatory piece. It's like something that's being enforced on us. We don't really want to do it. But soon down the line, there's consequences for the organization there. So that awareness, even at organizational level, needs to be there. We need to normalize conversations in the boardrooms where we're talking about, hey, let's deploy AI in our organization, and here's the strategic advantage. Here's how we're going to position ourselves better with our competitors. But also normalize conversations around moral responsibility of, are we upskilling our workforce to ensure that we're embracing productivity, driving efficiency, while at the same time not letting them feel threatened that AI is going to come and take their job? So it all is under that one same governance umbrella. And that is something that employers should have a moral accountability and responsibility of employing these kind of governance practices.
And not to forget what Valerie said before, that ensuring that there's some ethics in that framework as well. So what is ethical has to be defined, and it has to be incorporated within all the AI systems that are going to touch fintech products. Thank you very much for that really deep insight. There's one thing that I would really like to understand from Andew, Nayab, and Valerie is what's one AI capability every organization should adopt now? Every organization, what is that one AI capability that is very integral for their survival now? Or what's one that they should avoid as well?
I could go first.
Yeah.
In the context of cybersecurity, I personally would feel that detection capabilities using AI is definitely a must-have for organizations right now. That is something that is inevitable. It has to be there. It feeds into the entire security operations pipeline. So that detection capability and AI in general, not just related to cybersecurity, anything based on your organization, what industry you are in, what products or services you're providing, things that are taking up too much manual work, where you can drive automation, speed, efficiency, and make accurate and more accurate data. I think understanding those pipelines and implementing that into their workflows, operational workflows. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a consumer-facing, product-centric implementation. This can be internal operational too. So empowering your workforce by deploying AI systems for productivity and driving efficiency and speed is definitely something all organizations should look into.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that insight. Valerie, do you have, especially related to privacy, what's one aspect of AI all organizations should deploy or should avoid?
So I'll talk about the privacy piece in a second, because if we look at the likes of ChatGPT and in fact almost all of the open products that are out there, um, in Europe, they've been created unethically. Essentially, in the US, if data is manifestly made public, it's there to be used. But in the EU, if something is manifestly made public, it's irrelevant. You need to have what's called a legal basis for processing under Article 6 to be able to process any data. It doesn't matter whether it's manifestly made public or otherwise. So we have this constant use of data. We've seen that pirated websites have been used now. Instead of taking the authors, so I've written a book, you can't get access to it unless you pay for it, but actually a pirated site has been used, and that's what OpenAI and many of the other organizations have decided to use. So they're using, it's almost like well, I didn't rob the goods. Somebody else robbed them for me. I just bought the robbed goods from somebody else. And so they left them on the street. I picked them up. Can I be blamed? And I struggle with that piece. But for me, the most important tool to have in any organization, and it goes back to, I'm bringing my 30 years in the industry, is that people need to be familiar with products and understand their risks. So the best thing to do is, it's like when originally the search bar came out in Google. I remember there was so many awful things that this search bar could do. The risk, it was risk, risk, risk. And it's fundamental to us now, understanding its power, understanding its risks. And so it's learning how to use that. I think that everybody should be trained. The EU AI Act makes AI literacy compulsory. So that's right from the boardroom all the way down. You must have AI literacy since February 2025 in place. So you're just going to addend it onto your privacy and awareness training. But everybody should be using ChatGPT or its equivalent, Copilot, whatever one whatever particular poison you want to choose. Everybody should be using it. Every organization should be encouraging its use. Everybody should be encouraging its use with guardrails. That means licensed products only. That means understanding from a literacy perspective, what are the risks? Understanding the IP issues, not just understanding the cybersecurity issues, but understanding the wider array of issues. And if we become AI literate, then we become much better at applying the rules because now we understand the risks. So I think we all need to get to a space where we understand not to believe everything the AI says, because then we create prompts that automatically assume that you're not going to get it right first time. You only get that from practice. My biggest issue is simply in the organizations, in every organization right now. And I think it's really, really important. It's just like Instagram. We didn't know about likes. We didn't know they were going to be addictive. We didn't, or Twitter never knew that. Nobody ever thought about that. We never knew it was going to be used for bullying. They never thought about that either. They didn't design it so that it was going to be used as the key, most important bullying social media platform. Nobody knew that. And AI is the same. We don't know what the risks are. And so we tread into a world where we actually don't know what the implications are. What we do know is GPT-4 brought out the most amazing thing called reverse location. Amazing, You can just take a picture and show GPT-4 the picture, and it will come back and it will tell you where the picture is. Fantastic. But what about stalking, doxing, government surveillance, targeting attacks? It's just so dangerous. And so I think that where do we draw that line? How do we put guardrails in place on developers as well? How do we actually say to developers, oh, by the way, you have to think about what other people are going to do with this application, not just what you do with it, but what other people might misuse it for. You have to think about that and put those guardrails in. That's going to be really, really complex.
That's one area that I'm really afraid of from AI and all the products that just littering, the market. I've even, I've put in a proposal that every developer anywhere in the world working with AI should be licensed. There should be a license and they should be monitored so that we know exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it. So if they're incorporating anything unethical or anything that's dangerous, we know about that immediately. But anyway, thank you very much for a great insight again, Valerie. Andrew, your perspective, please.
Those are
And we
really
only
good.
have a few minutes.
I don't know if I'm like following up like the Rolling Stones or something, it's just the show's over now. So, I was just going to add, like, I mean, to the idea of the developers, for example, that's a whole other thing. Like the idea of vibe coding, right? Using AI to code. You no longer, it's like taking, the abstract to a whole new level. You used to have to do assembly language, and then you had to know how to use like C or Python. Now it's like, I don't need to know anything. I just need to know a language, and I just tell, AI to code me something. So that is going to be a whole new era of dangerous coding, because you don't have the insight as to how the things are being done. You're just telling it to do it. So your code is probably going to be really long, and it's going to be very, spaghetti kind of like code. And so that's going to introduce all kinds of other issues down the road. So I just wanted to say that. But yeah, like, going back to something I think would be super cool for every organization to have is more of using AI for collaboration. And, we've been in the situation where we're all like asking similar questions and, maybe sharing the same information or not finding something. So a centralized kind of, knowledge base and being able to have, I think that would be super useful. Even like policy questions and things like that. I think that would help a lot of people, newcomers, people that are trying to figure out how to do something new, without having to send 5 or 6 emails out. So I think that would be super beneficial. The other side is to more of like, monitoring and maintaining, shadow IT and things like that. Even shadow AI, right? Simple things as not using the free account, for example, or the individual free account, but using like an enterprise grade where you still have a centralized owner and manager of that account, so that when the onboarding and offboarding happens, it could be done properly. And anyways, that's probably my piece, I would say. That's how
Thank you
helpful
very
it would be.
much. We can go on talking for it about all this for another hour, but unfortunately we had the time. But it was time well spent, I would say. It was. I'm going to post this recording, and of course I'm going to go and listening to it many times. I'm really appreciative of you, Andrew, and Dr. Valerie, Lyons, and Nayab. The three of you have provided us with some great insight and great knowledge about AI and its use in cybersecurity or misuse as well. So thank you very much, and we'll come back to it again sometime, and hopefully we'll be able to invite you again and discuss this in deeper lens as well. Thank you for all the participants. Every participant will also be able to get a $100 discount for any course of their choice at Ferrotechnic Institute of Technology. If there are any questions from any participant, we are open for another few minutes. It's already 3 minutes over, but if there's any question, now is the time to speak or maintain your peace for future, as they say.
I would like to, if I may, just toss something in here as a parting shot. Some of our ancient North American natives actually gave us an adage that would certainly apply to AI. we all have within us a wolf. Can that wolf be evil or can that wolf be good? And the answer is whichever one you feed, that's the one that wins. So if all the developers and the implementers and the adopters of artificial intelligence take the approach of feeding the engines good, they will be good. If they take the approach of feeding the engines evil, it will be evil. So I think from a development perspective, from an implementation perspective, and for putting on those guardrails that many of us talked about, we need to look at some ancient wisdom for guidelines there. And I would also take a look at Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics. That's a pretty good idea there, as far as guardrails.
Yeah. He's my
The
favorite
artificial
author.
intelligence engines are only as smart, good, or evil as we humans make them.
Yeah. But, we can have all the ethics and all the guardrails over here. What about the adversaries on the other side of the fence? Somebody need to control them as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'd like to close this webinar with a great thanks to Andrew, to Valerie, to Nayab, and of course for your feedback, Tony. Much obliged for all that. Hopefully we'll get back again together soon. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Lovely to
Thank you.
meet you all.
Cheers.
Nice
Bye.
to meet you too.